Right, so let's continue on with what happens with the Roman Empire. So it's kind of the crisis of the third century, the recovery we kind of saw under Diocletian, but we left off with the issue of Christianity. I kind of broke it up into a couple of videos here because I didn't want to make them too long. They're hard to upload on YouTube if you make them too long. But anyways, to the fall, which is all going to be part of this lecture. Okay, so let's kind of continue on. And when we left off, we were about to talk about the key person and the impact on the Christian faith, because I said there was going to be about a seismic change into the Christian world now during the time of about 305 AD. So here we go. This guy, you may have heard of him before, Constantine. So these are all the key words you need. Constantine is going to become one of the key, if not one of the most important Roman emperors of the entire Roman Empire. Those were his years when he ruled. So go ahead, get all these terms down. I'm going to go to our map here in a moment and explain all of this. So you're going to want your map there and to get all these words down because we're going to kind of do the lecture on the map. Okay, so I'll give you a second. Pause if you need to get them down. And then we're going to go ahead and explain all this. Maybe you've heard of him before. Maybe you've heard of some of this before, but all pretty important. All right, so let's go to our map. And here again is our map of the spread of Christianity in the Roman Empire. And what we're going to see during the time of Constantine is a major change. So Diocletian dies. The Tetrarchy collapses. When the Tetrarchy collapses, basically you're going to have the guy named Licinius. He's going to take over the control of the East, right? It's not too important. If you don't even remember his name, I really don't care because Licinius is not going to have a very big role in things. More importantly is what happens in the West, because in the West, after Diocletian dies, there are going to be two key people trying to take control of the West, Constantine and the other guy named Maxentius. And so Maxentius and Constantine are going to fight it out until we get to a very important year, the year 312 AD. You don't need to memorize the year, but you definitely need to know what happens. Because Constantine and Maxentius are going to be involved in one of the most significant battles in all of ancient history. It is called the Battle of Milvian Bridge. And the battle itself is important. What happens right before the battle is even more important, because right before the battle, Constantine has a vision or a dream. And in this vision or dream, Constantine sees a symbol. What symbol does he see? Well, he sees a symbol. I'm going to draw it for you here. That looks something you might have seen like this before, or maybe you've seen it like this before. I don't know if you've ever seen this at a church. What is that symbol? Well, that's that Chi-Rho symbol, that two-word phrase that I put there for you, the Chi-Rho symbol. It's a Christian symbol. It's not Chi, it's Chi-Rho. It's the first two letters of the Greek word Christ. And this is the symbol that Constantine, who himself is a pagan, remember, at this point, Constantine sees this symbol. He's a pagan, and he sees it, and he's like, God, Christ, Christianity is talking to me, and he tells his men to put these symbols on his shields. Well, they go off to fight the battle, and of course, Constantine wins. Constantine is victorious, will take control of the West, eventually will take control of the East, and he's going to dominate the entire Roman Empire. When Constantine does this, he's going to say, "Ooh, Christianity helped me," and he's going to, while he's going to still stay pagan, but he's going to say the Christian faith can't be all that bad because this symbol helped me win. And the very next year, 313 AD, as a result of that Battle of Milvian Bridge and Constantine being victorious, he issues that other key term, the Edict of Milan. So again, you're writing these terms down again. Don't just write them down as the key terms. Write them down, everything I say about them. And the Edict of Milan, right, city up here in you can see on the map, just north Italy here. The city of Milan is, the Edict of Milan is very simple. It's an edict of religious toleration for Christians. And what Constantine says is from now on, it doesn't matter if you're a Christian, you could practice your faith in the Roman Empire. So, what impact does this have? Well, if you look at our map, everything in orange represents pockets of Christianity before Constantine. Everything in orange and green represents pockets of Christianity after Constantine. So basically, the entire Roman Empire. Now, this doesn't happen right away. This is a gradual thing, but fairly quickly, Christianity becomes the dominant faith in Rome. And people go, well, that's why Constantine is so important. And there's definitely something to that. I mean, there's this whole train of thought in history that because of Constantine, the Roman Empire became Christianized, which means, of course, Christianity will become a global dominating religion. And there's 2 billion Christians in the world today. No Constantine, that may not happen. It's a rational conclusion. However, there's another way of looking at it. There's always these different perspectives. And the other perspective is that Constantine actually could sense that the Christianity movement was growing. Constantine kind of wanted to get on the winning side of that Christian movement and jumped on the bandwagon. And so there's some people who say that's the reality. Or maybe it's a combination of both. But regardless, and I hope all that's clear, regardless, the religion is going to spread, and now Christianity will become a very dominant faith. Why does it spread and grow? Well, obviously, Christianity appeals to a lot of people. It appeals, what is the message of Christianity? Feed the unfed, clothe the unclothed, right? Help the needy. There's this, value system. There's the concept of the afterlife in it. And so for a lot of people in the Roman Empire, they're like, I like this idea, but they were afraid to openly say so because they might be fed to lions. And now that that's gone, people come out and say, hey, I'm a Christian. So that's pretty important, right? That's pretty significant things that are now changing in Rome. And the Roman Empire is going to continue for the rest of its history. And even past that, as we look at life in the Middle Ages, Christianity is going to be really dominant and important. So obviously that's really important. You need to know all of that about Constantine, right? So again, if you're looking at those IDs and you see Constantine or Battle of Milvian Bridge or Edict of Milan or whatever, you definitely want to have that as something to know well about. All right, well, now another couple of things about Constantine that I want you to know. A couple of the terms there: Arianism, Donatists. What is that about? Well, now that Christianity is really dominant in Rome, things that happen in the Christian faith are important. And so, for example, when Christianity was 5–10% of the Roman population, no one really cared what was going on within the Christian faith. But as Christianity grows, if there's an issue within the Christian faith, it impacts all of Rome. Arianism is one such issue. What is Arianism? It's named after a monk named Arius, who basically believed Christ was not divine. He's Christian, Arius, but he says Christ is the best of all man, but he's not divine, right? He's not holy, he's not spirit, he's not divine, right? And this is something that is not the view of Christianity today, but it was a very powerful idea back during the time of Constantine. And Constantine was like, I don't know what to do with this. And so he holds a big meeting called the Council of Nicaea. And Nicaea is a city in Asia Minor. And they hold this big old meeting. And they basically say Arianism is wrong, that Christ is in fact divine. That's pretty important because that does essentially establish one of the core ideas of Christianity that for the first 300 years was, small, was still in flux. There's a lot of core ideas of Christianity that were really up in the air in the beginning. In the beginning of Christianity, there was even debate within the Christian community, does somebody have to be Jewish before they're Christian? And then they said, no, you don't, because remember, Christ was Jewish. And so there's constant changes in thinking about the dogma and the beliefs of it. So anyways, that's a pretty important one. So Arianism doesn't completely disappear after the Council of Nicaea, but it does definitely take a big hit, and it's not going to be that mainstream view. The other issue is the Donatists. The Donatists were Christians in North Africa. And these guys were interesting. Also during the time of Constantine, they said anyone who converts to Christianity after the Edict of Milan is not a Christian. And what's their deal? Well, very simple. They were like, well, where were you when we were being fed to the lions? Oh, sure, now you want to be a Christian, now that you're not going to be persecuted. So this goes to Constantine, and Constantine says, are the Donatists correct? Are the Donatists incorrect? And he basically, as you can imagine, and you already can figure this out, he says the Donatists are wrong. How do we know that? Well, because if the Donatist view was held true, then there'd be very few Christians in the world today. But because Christianity is such a big faith, we obviously know anyone can convert to Christianity even after the Edict of Milan. But those are new issues that didn't happen before that now do. The only other point I want you to know about Constantine is that city of Byzantium is renamed to Constantinople. Constantine makes that his center, and now it's known as Constantinople. So it goes from Byzantium to Constantinople. Some of you be looking on the map and goes, it's not called Constantinople today. Well, it's not. It's going to change names again, and we'll talk about that later on in another lecture. But for now, it's Constantinople. All right. So anyways, that's all important. You definitely need to know all that about Constantine. So I hope all that's clear. What now? Well, after Constantine has this moment of this period of time, things start to we kind of move ahead. We move to the 5th century, the 400s, and as we move into the 400s AD, all the problems of the crisis of the 3rd century come back. They come back bigger. So if you had bad rulers in the crisis of the 3rd century, you have worse rulers. If you have a little invasion, you have bigger invasions. If you have some economic problems, you have bigger economic problems. If you have some shortage of manpower, you have bigger shortages of manpower. So, what Diocletian did was, again, short-term fixes. And now the Germanic people are inside of Rome. Bigger invasions are coming. And we get to a very important year. We get to this year 476. I'll just put it up here for you. 476 AD. What happens in 476 AD? This Roman Empire, this Roman civilization that we've been talking about for all this time now falls into what we call a dark age. All right, so here's our little black screen here. A dark age. In class, I just shut off all the lights in the room, and everyone's like, it's all dark in the room, right? So what do we mean, dark age? What does that mean? Well, let's talk about this. This is the Dark Ages. Let me put up some terms and explain to you what exactly happens to the Roman Empire in this year, again, 476 AD. There aren't many years you need to memorize. This might be a good one to know because not only is this the end of Rome, the beginning of the Dark Ages, this is also the end of the ancient world. If you remember the first lecture, 3000 BC to 476 AD, that's the ancient world. So it's the end of Rome, it's the end of the ancient world, it's the beginning of the Middle Ages, right? So we have to explain. This is a pretty pivotal point. So maybe, again, I tell you don't need to memorize dates. 476 is probably a date you should know. So here we go. So the Germanic invasions in the Dark Ages. So what's basically going to happen here is when we get to 476 AD, the key reason why the Roman Empire falls is because of these Germanic invasions. And you want to know these Germanic tribes. I'm going to show you a map. And so get these terms down: Visigoths, Vandals, Angles, Saxons, Franks, all right? And you want to get them all down. And basically, I'll show you on the map why they're important and what they do. And I'm going to also on this map explain a few more things about this term Dark Age. So I'm going to do a couple things here on our map. All right, so here we have our kind of map here of the Germanic tribes. And I'm going to go through this, but a couple things first about what we mean by a Dark Age. So number one, the term Dark Age basically means the characteristics of civilization disappear. Writing, architecture, cities, all that gone. So the Dark Ages are technically between the year 476, right, and 800 AD. The first part of the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages that we're going to get into in subsequent lectures is 476 to about 1400. So the first part of the Middle Ages are the Dark Ages. So this Roman Empire falls into a Dark Age. Does that mean everything goes bye-bye? And the answer is absolutely not. This is the problem with this term Dark Age and why I kind of put it in quotes. It's not completely a dark age. Is there political organization? Yes. Is there architecture? Yes. Is there things happening? Yes. It's just much less than what you had before. So that's one point I want you to know. Second point, when we say the term Dark Age, it's not all of Rome. It's only the western part of Rome. The eastern part of Rome, all this area here where Greece and Egypt and Asia Minor, that area does not fall. That area does not go into a dark age. The whole eastern part of Rome continues on for another 1,000 years. We're going to call it the Byzantine Empire. We're going to do a whole separate lecture on it. So that's the second point. We're only talking about the West. And why the West? Because the West is where you have these Germanic invasions. So now let me show you what I need you to know. So I gave you those tribes. These are all Germanic tribes. You need to know the name of the tribe, and you need to know what part of Rome they conquered, right? So make sure you get all this down. So the Lombards, and this map kind of shows it to you, and you have this map in your textbook to help you out. The Lombards start here. They're all come from north of the Rhine Danube, and then you see the name Lombards again down here. Why? Because the Lombards conquer northern Italy. So northern Italy, which was once part of Rome, and you can see the dates. It's all in the 400s, right? So the Lombards conquer northern Italy, right? That's one. Two, the Visigoths. You see the Visigoths over here, and then you see the Visigoths again over here. They start north of the Danube, and they end up conquering Spain. So Spain, which was once part of Rome, is now no longer part of Rome. It is now part of the Visigoth Germanic tribes, right? So these are the big tribes. Remember, when you're reading the Germania, all those little names you didn't know. These guys, you need to know, right? These are the big names. These are the big boys that you do need to know, all right? So that's two. Three, you have the Vandals. The Vandals start way, way up here north again in the Rhine River, and they end up taking West North Africa, right? Northwest Africa. That was once part of Rome, now Vandals, and yes, that's where we get the word vandalism from. These Germanic tribes were pretty ruthless, right? We're going to do some lectures on them, and they were a ruthless bunch to say the least. You have two other tribes, the Angles and the Saxons, and the Angles and the Saxons, well, they, one guess, take what part of Rome? Britain, hence the term Anglo-Saxon. So that, Hadrian's Wall ain't going to work anymore. The Angles and the Saxons sweep in across the sea here, and they conquer Britain. All of those tribes are important. You need to know all of them, but I'm saving the most important one for the end. And the most important one are the Franks. And what part of Rome do the Franks conquer? This northern part of Gaul. G-A... so you can see it. I haven't put it before. I didn't put it as a key term because you already should know it. But G-A-U-L, the northern part of France today. I'm sorry, what is the northern part of France today? What we call back then Gaul. And so the Franks conquer Gaul. They will be the most important of all the Germanic tribes. I could do a lecture on each of these Germanic tribes. I'm not going to, but we are going to do an entire lecture on the Franks because they are that important. So that's essentially what happens to the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire, 476 in the West, falls. Another last point on this, it's not like you go to bed at 475 AD and you have a thriving Western Roman Empire in 476, everything collapses, right? Again, this has been going on since the crisis of the 3rd century. It's just now, it's all weighed in. The West collapsed, the East continues. It's a dark age in the West. It's not fully a dark age. There is things happening. Like I said, if there weren't anything happening, we couldn't do lectures on these guys, but we can. And so we're going to now kind of move on to our next period of time in this class, and that's the period between 476 and 1400s, and that's the Middle Ages. So let me just kind of set things up for you as we move forward, because what we're going to do is, remember, the eastern part of the Roman Empire survived. So we're going to spend a couple of lectures looking at the East. What happens between 476 and 1400s in the East? There's two things happening in the East during these years. There's the Byzantine Empire, and there's going to be the rise of the Islamic faith. So we're going to look at those two things. In this class, I just spent a little bit of time on it. If you take my History of the Middle East class at some point, we spend a lot more time on that area because it's going to impact the Middle East. So we're just going to do a couple brief lectures on the Byzantine Empire and the rise of Islam, right? After we do that, then we're going to shift back to the West, and we're going to go back to 476. So we're going to do 476 to 1400 on the Byzantine Empire and Islam. Then we're going to go back to 476 and spend a lot more time looking at these Germanic tribes, talking about the Franks, talking about life in the Middle Ages, talking about lords and vassals and kings and crusades and 100 Years' Wars and church and state and knights and lords and vassals and fiefs and all that fun stuff we associate with the Middle Ages, right? So we're going to kind of do a couple brief lectures on the East, and then we're going to shift back on the West. All right, so I hope all that's clear. Again, all of this is material you need for your second quiz So you're kind of have your second quiz. You start to have material for the final. You can start to prepare. Again, your quiz number 2 is covering everything from the second triumvirate, right? So from that lecture on Julia Claudians, the second triumvirate, moving forward, and including anything from the Germania, yeah, it could also be on it. Don't forget, you still have your BD book, right? I don't make lots of references to that, but there's readings in there that you could bring into your quizzes, into your exams. So you always want to be doing the primary source readings as well. You'll have more stuff on the discussion boards and things like that on that coming up as well. So anyways, I hope all that's clear. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.